This is a brisket we're going to be making into pastrami or corned beef. We're just taking it out of the cryo vat now, and we're going to get it outside and trim it up so it's ready to roll. So we got our brisket outside where we're going to start trimming it up. Get all your stuff handy, reasonably sharp knife. Steel, couple of trays for scrap. Now my disclaimer on this is I am not a brisket expert. I use briskets only to make corned beef and pastrami out of, and I don't barbecue a bunch of them or anything else. So trimming is not my strongest suit on brisket. So don't critique my style too badly on this, please. What I want to do is get this down, get all the heavy fat off of it. Some of it I could save for making burger and stuff like that, but in this particular instance, I've got all the fat I need, so this is just going to be scrap. My mindset is to get all the heavy surface fat off of it, all the blue meat off of it, so. I've gotten the fat, the heavy fat off the surface of my brisket, and now I'm going to separate the flat, this part down here, from the point, this part up here. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's kind of a vein of fat that runs all the way through that separates the two pieces. So I'm going to just try to cut down through that fat and just basically fillet one part from the other. So remember, I said I'm not a brisket expert, so don't laugh. See, now I've got my flat trimmed up pretty nicely. I got the heavy surface fat gone, most of the blue meat gone, and a pretty nice uniform piece. That's the flat. So the point now, you can really see it's real thick on one end and pretty thin on the other end. So I did this the other day on some, and I just kind of butterflied this thick part down to make everything a uniform thickness. So we're going to give that a whirl. Now you can see that now pretty nice uniform piece, so I kind of like that. So we're going to talk about economics of some stuff here. Number one, this is about the only thing I do that there is zero economics in between buying a piece of corned beef at the store or doing it yourself. You can buy corned beef for $5-6 a pound. When I trim up a brisket like this, and I've done briskets and I've done tri-tips, I end up with about a 50% loss. So whatever you're paying for the meat, just flatly double it, and that'll get you closer to your costs. So, and along those lines, when you go to a local butcher shop and you notice their prices are way more than the big box stores, but you got to remember that what you're buying has been well trimmed. It's better quality meat. It's, you know, it's just trimmed to perfection. It's a great quality meat, and those guys have to pay for inspections, they got to pay for their help, and they got to make a profit. So that's why you pay a little bit more at your local butcher shop, but you get what you pay for. So now that we're done here, I'm just going to cut this into a few workable size pieces. Just do it like that. Now, corned beef and pastrami are essentially the same thing. Corned beef, or pastrami, is just corned beef that's been smoked and has a rub on it. That's the big difference. But the brine, you can use the same brine for both of them, which is what I do. My brine mixture that I use on the pastrami has got a little bit more sweet things in it than what corned beef brines usually call for. But let's get this inside and get it in the brine. I've got the stuff inside. I'm going to weigh it up and just see exactly what our loss is. I expect 50 to 60% loss. This was 14 pounds when I started out. So we're at 7 pounds 3 ounces now. It's right about your 50% loss. I could have spent a little more time and maybe saved, you know, a few ounces of meat, but to me it's not worth the time to do it. So anyway, that's a demonstration of the loss that you get trimming one of these up. The next step in making pastrami or corned beef is the brine. Now my brine is about 1.5 gallons of water, and then I mix that. Into that we add packed brown sugar, white sugar, honey, pickling spice, kosher salt, and some Cure #1. I'm not trying to keep, I'll give you the exact amounts in the description box at the beginning of this video. So we've got our brine all mixed. You mix all those ingredients together, you put it on a stove and you heat it up till it's just simmering, and then you and then let it cool, let it chill overnight, the brine mix, and get it on the meat. Now when you're brining, you could either put the meat in this tub. You don't want it stacked together like this. You want the brine to get to everything, and you want the meat to be covered. So I got a bunch of garlic in my brine too. A little bit more in the bottom than the top, so I'm going to move some to this other pan.
Even out the goodies?
Even out the goodies. Give it a little stir here. Get it a little better distributed. Okay, you'll see how my my meat is floating a little bit. You want to make sure it stays covered. So I'm just going to take a plate and put them on these pieces just to keep them submerged.
You actually wash your hands while you're handling meat?
Never.
That one's for the comment section, and you know who you are.
This one might take 2 plates, I think, is what I'm going to do. Okay, I've got the meat submerged. What I'll do is the plate can interfere with the brine getting into every piece of meat, so I'll turn this at least once a day to make sure that everything gets well cured in the process. So we'll put this in the refrigerator. We brine it for 3 full days before we pull it out and smoke it. So into the fridge. I'm brining my pastrami now, getting it in the refrigerator. You've seen this fridge before. I've made them into smokers, non-working models. This is a working model, and I just love it for all my meat handling stuff. I've got big chunk of stuff in there I'm going to be making into burger. I've got these 2 big trays. I can put a bunch of bacon in it to brine. The amount of space in these things for $500 is money well spent. And it holds all your beer too. All right, we'll come back in 3 days and get the smoking and rubbing that stuff. So I touched a little earlier on how I use both tri-tip and brisket to make this pastrami or corned beef out of. The advantages of tri-tip, especially if you're buying it in bulk, it's more versatile. You can do more things with your tri-tip than you can a brisket. The tri-tip is a little tougher to trim the fat off of, but overall it's more tender and more versatile, although it's more expensive. So that's the plus on the tri-tip. The brisket is, there's a shorter cook time on the tri-tip also if you're doing other things with it. Smaller piece of meat, so that's an advantage. The brisket, it's easier to trim, it's cheaper, but it's a little less versatile than the tri-tip is. So there's the pluses and minuses of each one. And I'm going to be experimenting in the future with some different cuts. I might even try doing in New York for corned beef or pastrami. So I'll keep you posted on that if I find a magical cut that I really like.